I guess that brings me to the central claim that has resulted in the defunding of UNRWA by the United States government and other Western governments. On the day that the ICJ ruled that Israel was plausibly committing genocide, the Israeli government alleged that UNRWA workers participated in the October 7th attack, providing evidence that Channel 4 News, among others, have said is fairly threadbare to be charitable. What is your response to the reaction of some of these Western governments, including the United States, to
Sure.
that claim?
Let me take you through it a little bit, because it was actually UNRWA that broke the news on the 19th of January. And the way it played out was that the officials at the Israeli Foreign Ministry, handed the head of UNRWA 12 names and said, can you verify that these are still employees? We think they may have been directly related. They may have had direct involvement in October 7th. We validated that their names, they were still employees. Now, how did Israel know that, Emma? Because every year we give Israel the employee list, just like we do every host country. So what did we do about it? The Commissioner General, it didn't, these are allegations, but the Commissioner General didn't wait. We discovered that 2 were already dead, but we immediately terminated the other 10 because of the reputational risks that they posed to the agency, and also to the humanitarian response overall. We then, my boss, the Commissioner General, did what all bosses do. He went to see his boss, Secretary General, and as a result, the UN equivalent of the Inspector General was called in. The Inspector General has budgetary and investigative autonomy, just like an Inspector General does at the United States. They're already on the ground in the region, trying to determine what's happened. And as you noted, one of the things that the Inspector General, the investigation will turn on is how much will Israel tell them. The other thing that was done, and here's in a sense the shame of it all, even before that announcement, our Commissioner General had already decided to commission an independent review of the agency. And he did that because, as you know, there's been an endless stream of they did this, we say that, they did this, we say that. And the Commissioner General had reached the point where he's like, it's hard for policymakers to know what's right and wrong anymore because of the way various charges and counter charges are flying back and forth. So let's have an independent review. Let's look at the charges. Let's look at the motivations behind the charges. Let's look at the veracity of them. But let's also look at UNRWA and what UNRWA does about them and if there's things that can be done better. So the Secretary General took it over, and on February 14th, the independent review began its work. It's being led by a former French foreign minister. So we're taking these, the UNRWA response to this has been swift and decisive. And I think it's really encapsulated best by my boss. Listen to me, I'm a horrible suck up to my boss, but this is the reason he's the boss. But he's right. This is not a part of the world where there is zero risk. But for UNRWA, there has to be zero tolerance. And that is the way that we have always approached these issues, because they're complicated issues in a complicated part of the world. And the question is going to be not necessarily if you do your best to make sure they don't happen, but just as important is what do you do once it's made known to you? And to your point earlier, Emma, that's a big thing here. We've had a series of accusations floated in the media, but UNRWA has not received anything from the government of Israel beyond the initial 12 names.
And the names that were provided, what was the evidentiary support provided about their claims that they were involved in the October 7th attack?
None. They were asked. We were simply told that they have intelligence that they were directly involved in October 7th. Now, these people have, although these people were terminated, they do have rights to appeal. And, if it turns out that those allegations were incorrect, UN tribunal can reverse that. But again, the Commissioner General felt very strongly, and you've already seen the reaction to it, that this posed a major reputational risk to the agency, and that he was therefore going to terminate them immediately.
You were concerned about your agency is concerned about the broader efforts to provide relief in Gaza at this point, right, in this critical juncture.
Exactly.
And over 13,000 employees of UNRWA, is that the accurate total?
There's actually, we have over 30,000 employees, 13,000 of whom work in Gaza.
Yes.
So,
sorry.
no. Listen, this is why you had me on. I mean, remember something here. If UNRWA is more than Gaza, Gaza is certainly got the spotlight right now. But if it weren't for Gaza, the spotlight would be on the terrible situation in the West Bank. And we know that security on the Israeli northern border is just as important. And what happens if you halt the UNRWA operation for Palestine refugees in Lebanon? Which is also quite substantial. This is, risks to the agency aren't just risks to the humanitarian response in Gaza, which we lead, right. But it also has regional security implications as well. But make no mistake about it, Emma, we are the backbone of the humanitarian response in Gaza. I think one of my colleagues, Julia Tuma, put it best. She said, it might be World Health Organization vaccine, but ultimately it's an UNRWA nurse that jabs the poor unsuspecting kid. And that's how it is. We manage fuel. Food comes in for other agencies or NGOs. We're the ones that truck it. It is a very complex operation, and we were only able to undertake it because of our very substantial footprint in Gaza before October 7th.
And what has the funding cuts? What have the funding cuts done? And what is the situation for UNRWA going forward with these governments, including the United States, removing funding?
Well, I'll tell you what, even before October 7th, Emma, the hardest job at UNRWA was being the chief financial officer. And this gentleman is a genius as far as I'm concerned, because remember something here. UNRWA is not funded out of United Nations regular dues. Any funding that comes to UNRWA from donor states is above and beyond what they pay to the UN every year in annual dues. So even before October 7th, our chief financial officer had to suss out the commitments, look at the history, look at the expected date of when that we were going to receive the check. And this is no small thing, Emma, because it ties into what I was talking about earlier. This is an operational agency. In other words, what's our largest cost driver? Salary for 30,000 people. So at the moment, we're living month to month. We are, because of a couple contributions that have come in from donor states like Norway, we'll be able to get through February. But now the next risk is, will we get enough contributions in to make it through March? And this is the world that we live in now. And a lot of this is going to turn on, I believe, the Inspector General report, which is, I think there's going to be an interim report that might help with some of the immediate issues. But also intermediate reports from the independent review of the agency. So it is, in fact, I was in a meeting this morning with my fellow senior staffers, and the word they used probably best, it's fluid right now. But what we can tell you is that if we close up shop at the end of March, there's going to be substantial repercussions in the region. You don't just snap your finger and suddenly the WHO and UNICEF, for example, are delivering humanitarian response in Gaza. It just doesn't happen that way.
So what is morale like with UNRWA right now? Because there have been, a lot of accusations thrown against the agents out there against the agency, and have there been efforts to kind of clear the name of UNRWA on this front?
So first of all, as I mentioned, the workforce is over 30,000. Right. All but a couple hundred are Palestine refugees themselves. And so the morale, they're very tense. It's very concerning. In this part of the world, an UNRWA salary can support 2, 3, 4 families, for example. And now they know they're living month to month. What we do is, a big part of this for the Commissioner General, and he's absolutely right about this, is constant communication with the staff. Let them know what the state of play is. Let them know how hard you're working on their behalf. This is, and Emma, you've really hit it. It's a very frustrating time because you get accusation after accusation, but there's nothing ever shared with you to respond to it. So, for example, the Wall Street Journal did a story, I think the Monday after we announced that we had terminated the 12 employees, and it was a mastery of It was a mastery of a hatchet job in the sense that the only two people that were named were the Secretary General of the UN and the Commissioner General of UNRWA. Everything else was sources, an Israeli source, people say. So the Wall Street Journal is looking at documents that you mentioned earlier, which we have never seen. And they obviously arrived at one conclusion, but as you noted, Sky News and I think News Channel 4 in Britain both looked at the same thing and didn't find it terribly compelling at all. Now, there was a document apparently waved about on Friday at the Munich Security Munich Security Conference, and we haven't seen that one either. And so the accusations fly with little by way of evidence to support them. So it is incredibly frustrating.